Anybody know how many employees are in the Attorney General's office? Any guess? 4,200 people. And over 100 offices. 62% of that, approximately, is child support. So that's a big part of what we did. I'll talk about that in a minute. But I talked about child support and what a big part it is for us. Texas obviously cares about collecting child support because for the custodial parent. And some of that is we certainly want to take care of our children. We also want to make sure that people don't need government assistance as a result of parents not taking care of their kids. And so it's a big effort. We have almost 1 million clients that we deal with a year. Texas is particularly good at it. We collected over $4 billion last year. The closest state, well, just to give an example of California, which is much larger than us, they collected $2.3 billion. And for every dollar that we spend on child support collections, we collect about $12.27. The closest to us is South Dakota, and they collect about $10.50. California collects about $2.50. So we try to continue to increase that efficiency because it results in what we think is good public policy, helping children, and also saving the state a lot of money. And we'll continue to push to improve that.
Okay, on the grandparents page, I assume this is on your website, you mentioned that grandparents play an important role in their grandchildren's lives. Yet in Texas, grandparents' visitation rights and grandchildren's rights to see the grandparents they love are virtually non-existent. What legislative recommendation can you suggest, and what actions can you take to help secure these rights?
Well, that is obviously a legislative issue. It's very tricky. A little, you've got the balance between the parents who are, fundamentally responsible for taking care of their children, and then you have some interest of the grandparents. I don't know exactly what the right answer is. I know that, we always wanted our grandparents around, or my parents and her parents. But that is a policy issue that has to be, if it's going to be addressed, has to be addressed by the legislature. My office would not really have any say other than if they look to us to provide help on drafting it in a way that would work and make sure that it was constitutional.
Okay, here's a twofer related question. What percentage of our state government comes from the federal government and state budget, I'm sorry, thank you. And can we live without it? And then as a follow-on, how much money does your agency receive in Title D dollars for forcing parents that lost kids due to corruption by courts?
Okay.
I think that might be an editorial.
The answer is we get a lot of money from the federal government. I don't know the exact percentage, but obviously it's a large amount of money. Obviously, there's a lot of strings attached to it. My office, a lot of our child support money, 2/3 of our child support money comes from the federal government. So, we're dealing with that on a constant basis. They have their own rules that you have to follow to get the money, but those have been in place for a long time. Whether you would want to walk away from, I don't know what percentage, 30-40% of our budget coming from federal government, I'm guessing, but it's a lot.
Tarrant County has the highest rate of child abuse, I did not know this, in the state. When will the family court here be audited? And then the follow-on, can anything be done to hold people with impunity accountable for dishonesty?
So we don't do the audits, and that would be a legislative function. If there's something more that needs to be done to hold people accountable, that would go through the legislature. A lot of times people want my office to do things that we don't have the authority to do. And I've spent a lot of my career fighting government that is doing things that they're not supposed to do under their own authority. And so we stay away from doing things that are policy related or things that other branches of government are supposed to do. My job is to follow my authority. And a lot of times people want me to do things that other branches of government, and one of those things is I can't change the law. That's the legislature. I can help them, I can give them guidance, but it's up to them to change the law.
If you're concerned with child trafficking, which obviously you are, do you consider parental kidnapping a part of this? And if so, why are fathers not prosecuted?
That's a complicated question that depends on the family situation, whether obviously divorce affects relationships, and that ends up being covered by consent decrees and orders that are negotiated among the parties or ordered by the judge. That one's hard to answer because I don't really know what situation is being addressed here. One of the challenges we have in my office is we don't have a lot of original jurisdiction in any kind of criminal case. So we're mostly a civil law firm. We deal with criminal cases when we get referred those cases by DAs. Unless it's an election fraud issue, the DAs have been very guarded about transferring any of their power or even giving concurrent jurisdiction. And so one of the frustrations, this is particularly true in South Texas, some of my friends in South Texas legislators have complained about the corruption because the local DAs are sometimes involved, and so they won't pursue the people that they should pursue because they're also elected by them. And so the DAs Association has guarded that. It would be nice to have some concurrent jurisdiction in the AG's office to go after it if, say, a DA won't. And this is one of those cases. There may be corruption, there may be a lot of corruption. We may know it, and a DA may know it. The DA can ignore it, and there's no accountability for that. There's no one overseeing DAs. They have absolute control over what gets prosecuted. And if they actually prosecute somebody illegally, there's very little that you can do because once they get the indictment, I know this from my own case, once they get the indictment, they could have lied to the grand jury. You won't know it because it's all secret. That's designed to protect the innocent, supposedly. But there's no recording of it necessarily. You don't get to defend yourself. They can lie. And once they get the indictment, you're stuck. And so there's a lot of power in the DAs that I think deserves some check, at least some other accountability, but we don't have it in Texas, and the DAs have argued hard and long that they should not have that accountability.